let's talk about counseling the bereaved. As chaplains, you will have plenty of opportunities to provide support for people who are suffering from grief. Grief is often thought of as a response to the death of a loved one, but there are many types of loss that trigger grief. There are those who suffer grief over the loss of a limb due to amputation. How about those who receive the news they must receive kidney dialysis to stay alive? And even those who are placed in an assisted living care facility to live out the remainder of their days. In other settings, a person can experience the loss of a job, loss of a home, or perhaps having to move away from family and friends to a different state to attend college. There are many circumstances that can and do produce the symptoms of grief. Our role as chaplain is to walk alongside those who are hurting, providing the sacred presence of God, allowing them to share and talk about their grief and pain in hopes they will receive God's comfort that enables them to process their grief and arrive at a place of peace. There are several types of grief: normal, disenfranchised, complicated, and anticipatory. Sometimes the symptoms of grief can be quite severe. This is called acute grief. Acute grief typically occurs in the early period after a loss and often dominates the life of a bereaved person. Strong feelings of yearning, longing, and sorrow are typical, as are insistent thoughts and memories of the person who died. Other painful emotions, including anxiety and anger and remorse, guilt, or shame, are also common. These are common responses and symptoms of grief. Well, there are a variety of resources available and strategies available to support those who are grieving. Examples include self-help books and biotherapy, prescriptions and professional counseling, but no support is as effective as a simple, loving person who practices the ministry of presence to those who will accept the company. Chaplains or spiritual care providers have a unique contribution to make in the care of those who are grieving. We must be willing to spend time in relationship, time listening and being present. Chaplaincy is built on relationships. Because of the chaplain's expertise in building relationships and communication and understanding and religious and spiritual, existential, cultural beliefs, values, and practices, the chaplain's expertise can be essential in identifying potential areas of spiritual distress as well as spiritual resources to draw upon. And as we said before, chaplains are the ones who are willing to listen, to love, to understand. When the person is in a dark place, unable to see the light, the chaplain is willing to sit with them in the dark. A helpful illustration is found in the encounter between Winnie the Pooh and Piglet. "Today was a difficult day," said Pooh. There was a pause. "Do you want to talk about it?" asked Piglet. "No," said Pooh after a bit. "No, I don't think I do." "That's okay," said Piglet, and he came and sat beside his friend. "What are you doing?" asked Pooh. "Nothing really," said Piglet. "Only I know what difficult days are like. I quite often don't feel like talking about it on my difficult days either. But goodness," continued Piglet, "difficult days are so much easier when you know you've got someone there for you. And I'll always be here for you, Pooh." And as Pooh sat there, working through in his head his difficult day, while the solid, reliable Piglet sat next to him quietly, swinging his little legs, Pooh thought that his best friend had never been more right. There is so much to learn from the philosophy of Pooh and his little friends. In helping people to process their grief, chaplains should become familiar with the concepts of therapeutic ritual. Therapeutic ritual. In a good work by Doka and Martin in 2010, 4 types of ritual are described. This recommended resource may be a helpful addition to your library. The 4 types of ritual are rituals of continuity, rituals of transition, rituals of reconciliation, and rituals of affirmation. The first one, rituals of continuity, are used to continue a person's bond with the one who died even long after the death has taken place. Rituals are used to trigger positive memories of the deceased so that the person can learn to cope with their loss. This could be something as simple as gathering the family together on the anniversary of the death, lighting a candle, sharing some memories, and savoring the moment. Next, rituals of transition. They are used to help a person adapt and move on with life, even claiming for themselves space that was previously associated with the deceased. A family member may ask you to provide a blessing of the home after the death of a loved one. Or the staff may ask you to bless the room where the resident lived for many years before dying in their bed at the assisted living facility. I've found that providing a simple prayer of blessing in the actual space where the person died, honoring the person as well as the staff or family members, can provide tremendous peace and closure. 3. Rituals of reconciliation. These are a means of helping those who are grieving to give and receive forgiveness. This type of ritual helps people finish the business of grieving and come to grips with their new reality. Consider an example of a person writing a long letter to their deceased loved one that shared their thoughts, emotions, regrets, and asking and granting forgiveness can be a very helpful tool to bring peace. And then there's rituals of affirmation. It was often my practice while serving in hospice that I would facilitate a ritual of affirmation. When the patient was close to death or even after they had died, I would ask the family members to gather around the bed of their loved one. Often family members are afraid to come near or even touch their loved one. I would give them permission to come close and even touch the deceased if they were comfortable. I would then ask them if they would be willing to share about their loved one, especially those things they love and will miss not having their loved one nearby. It was generally a slow start, but eventually many stories were told, tears were shed, and even laughter was expressed. It was wonderful to allow them to experience this very sacred and holy time filled with love. In closing, if you are looking for grief resources, we highly recommend you take the online course at Chaplains Academy for certification in Christian counseling for grief. This is a fully online, self-paced 8-section course that provides 25 hours of CE. It uses a wonderful textbook titled Healing Relationships, A Christian's Manual for Lay Counseling by Stephen Grunland and Daniel Lamberges. You can find the course at christianchaplains.org. Now, for a higher-end professional certification, consider the Grief Recovery Method, which is a certification course accepted by the Veterans Administration for chaplain specialization. Also, Stephen's ministry offers great training in coming alongside people who are grieving. You will need to find your own tools, resources, techniques, and networking relationships with other professionals so that you can help those who are grieving. This is just the beginning of your journey to help people recover.